Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to learn how you can create your very own Python text editor in PyQt. This application was part of the PyCon workshop that I had conducted, in which we taught game development to students. So let's get started with it. Alright, so let me just first create a new folder structure. I'll be using main.py to start the code, and also I'll be storing my UI related files in this UI folder. We'll first head to our Qt 5 designer, and over there we'll create a main window. Now this will be the base layout of how our application is going to look like. For this we'll be adding different widgets inside our designer. So the first thing that we are going to add over here is a tree widget. The tree widget is used in order to show all the files that we are going to open. So let's give the name of this particular column. After this, you can add a horizontal layout. Now in this horizontal layout, we'll first start with the file name. So this label actually will show the file name. So next we'll be adding two push buttons. One will be for zooming in and one will be for zooming out. Then we also need a push button in order to actually run our code. After this, we are going to add a horizontal spacer so that whenever we resize our application, automatically the placement of all the widgets are taken care. Next, we are going to take a vertical layout and place the existing horizontal layout along with all its components inside it. So the purpose of doing this is, so later on we'll be using the same vertical layout to add our text editor. So overall, we'll be setting the layout as horizontal layout. Next, after correcting the sizing so that we give the ample space to our text editor, we'll save this particular file inside our UI folder. Alright, in the file menu, we'll also give the option for opening and saving that particular file. Now let's rename all the buttons, labels and all the layouts so that in the code also we'll be referring to the same variable. Alright, now let's jump back to our Python code. The very first step would be to import all the different libraries that we are going to use. In order you want to have reference for it, please head to the GitHub repository in the link mentioned below. The very first thing that we will be doing is create the main class that will become our Python text editor, which will be of type QMainWindow. So QMainWindow is basically the parent of this particular class. At the time of initialization, we have to do certain steps. So the very first thing is initializing our UI. The method that we are going to approach is something that I've explained in my previous videos also, so do check them out as well. What we'll be doing is we'll be loading our UI using uic.loadUI and give the relative path of the UI file. The next thing is gonna be set the main title of our window. So this, you can name it anything. For now, I'm going to name it as Python text editor. Alright, now this function will be called while initialization itself, and also we need to add self.show. Now let's call this class. For this, we also need to set up the Q application. You can also place this code inside a try except so that if there are any keyboard interrupt while running the application, we can close the open application that is there. Now let's start by trying to run this particular application. Alright, you can see we are getting an empty Q window. Let's solve this issue. We forgot to add a self over here. Now as you can see, the code is compiling properly. Now these button functionalities has not been added. So we'll also do one more thing, that we'll be declaring all the buttons and all the labels that we are going to use, so that automatically in the code recommendation it can tell us what all functions are being supported. Using the signal and slot method, we'll be linking the button clicks to a specific function, right? And similarly, we'll also link a specific action, that is for open and save, to a specific function that we can run locally. In order to run the code, at least we'll have to define all the functions. So let's do that. Okay, so let's try running the code and see that our signal and slots are working fine. Just click on run code and you should see the print statement. Alright, the next step is going to be our actual text editor in which we'll be writing our text. So let's create a class for that as well. We have to create a new file over here. You can do that in the same file as well, but just to keep the code separate and neat and clean, I'm creating one more file over here. After importing the necessary libraries, we'll start with the class Python code editor, which will have its parent QPlain text edit. Alright, let's initialize this class. And just to check whether it is running properly or not, I'll be having a dummy application. Okay, so before execution, in the initialization, we also have to set the tab stop width and the tab change focus as well. The default zoom level, I'm going to set it as 5. And then a simple function in which it'll return it as a simple plain text. So this function is we are going to use in our main class also. We'll first try to run this particular code and see whether everything is running fine or not. As you can see, we have a simple window in which you can write in any of the text that you want. Now let's integrate this into our main code. That's why I'll just import this Python code editor class. And define it over here as a queue widget. Now this queue widget should be part of the vertical layout that we had created in our UI file. And as you can see, now this particular thing has been added. So this is a very basic layout that we have created. Now let's write the functionality of running the Python code. For that, what we'll do is simply we'll transfer all the text into a temporary Python file and run that particular Python file in a separate terminal. So for that, we'll open a temp file over here and then write all the text that is present in that particular class inside it. Now I'm going to write a command. In order to run it, I also need a subprocess. So subprocess is essentially used so that my main code doesn't hang while I'm running this particular code. We'll be using genome terminal in order to actually run this particular command. So first let me write it. And in that subprocess, I'll be running the genome terminal. In here, you can also see in the subprocess I have mentioned, once all the code that we'll be writing in the text editor has actually completed, after that it will basically show press enter to exit. Right, so it will give the user option that he wants to close that particular terminal or not. So let's see this in action. We can start by a simple print statement. Okay, now let's run the code. Alright, we see that we have an error. Okay, I forgot to add W. So what W does is we'll be opening this particular file in write mode so that we can add whatever the text we want in that particular file. Right, now you can see it has automatically opened a terminal, and after pressing enter you can close this thing. Now you can do a lot of different things. So for example, you can also take input as well. So I'll be doing that. I'll be taking an I input, and I'll be adding that into my print statement. Now let's run the code. Over here you can see that I'm entering the string, and that is also reflected over here. Alright, so till now what we have seen is that Python code is actually shown, but we cannot call it a Python text editor unless and until we highlight the specific keywords related to what Python supports, right? So for that we have to create a new class called Python syntax highlighter. So essentially the functionality of this particular class would be to highlight specific keywords that we are going to mention. This will have the base class as QSyntaxHighlighter. Alright, let's initialize this, which will take the complete document as an input. Now we'll be adding different rules which it will have to obey in order to highlight the text. I'll be just doing a simple copy paste for that. Now let's understand this particular piece of code. What is happening that we are going to set font weight, so we have to set it as bold for which all keywords. So I have mentioned all the keywords over here. If in case you want to highlight something else, you can add those particular words also in these keywords. Then what I have done is I have created it as a rule and appended that into a list. Now this list will actually be used in order to compute things. Along with that, I have also created how double and single quotes are going to look like, and similarly how the triple quotes will be looking like, because these are all very important features. Now next, what we are going to do is create a function called highlight block, which will take text as an input, and then it will run through all the patterns and format that we have specified in that particular array. And if in case it matches it completely, what we'll do is we'll transform that particular piece of text, because if the conditions are met, then we'll be able to apply those particular rules. In the initialization part itself, we have to initialize this syntax highlighter and then add the whole document as an input for this particular class. That's it. Okay, so we have a small issue over here. So this particular thing is actually supported from Python 3.10, which we don't have as of now. I see. Okay, the variable name I have set it as different. I'll just change the variable name. Now let's start by writing it. You see, as soon as I have written import, it will automatically change the color. That is how it is supposed to work. And as soon as I enclose anything in the apostrophe, so I'm using double quotes over here, it is changing the color there itself. As you can see, after running the code also, it is running fine. We don't have any issue over here. So the next thing that we are going to write is actually we are able to zoom in and zoom out of the text. So for that, let me just write the code. What we need to do is essentially we are maintaining one zoom level. So by default, if it's set at 5, write a function to change that particular zoom level. It is like we also have to cap it as well. So for example, zoom in should not go beyond 20. This is the maximum zoom that I have set as of now. Write similar thing for zooming out as well. Now let us integrate that into a main function as well, so that the functions that we had already created were text zoom in and text zoom out. We have to integrate it over there. As you can see, it is just zooming in and not zooming out. Okay, so by mistake I have written zoom in at both the places, so let me change that. Alright, now it should work. The next thing that we are going to do is open a file. So we want to give the user also the option to any of the files that he or she wants. right? For that, I'll be creating a Q file dialog box. So what this dialog box will be doing is essentially it'll let me allow any of the Python file in order to open that and then display it into our text editor. And if the user wants, they can run that particular file. Let me set the filter for it, and also the view mode will be the list mode. Now let's write the code. As you see, I have mentioned if file dialog dot exec underscore, right? What this will do is, unless and until you select the file, that loop will not go forward. So that function will not go forward. You have to select the file, or you have to cancel that particular operation. In any situation, you have to complete that. As of now, I have taken a list, but we are supporting for a single file, right? So the user can select multiple files, but I'll just show you the functionality of opening a single file. Maybe after that you can try to integrate all the files. So let's try opening this file, and as you can see, we are able to open the file. So you see that any file that we want, we are able to open it, and we are also able to run it. The way that we have done for opening a particular file, let's do for saving a file as well. For this also, we'll be requiring a Q file dialog box. The only difference is now we'll also have to write a function in order to save. So earlier we were opening the file in read mode. Now we'll be opening the file in write mode. One thing that we forgot to add earlier in opening the file is that we also need to show that particular path in our tree widget, correct? So let's do that as well. So for that, we have to first create a QTree widget item. This QTree widget should have input of this parent, and now we'll add this particular item into our QTree widget. So let's see if you're able to see. So we have an item added inside it, but we're not able to see the name. So I forgot to add text over here. So the same file path actually should be given as an input. Now let's try adding it. Alright, so now we are getting an error. Yeah, my bad. So actually this has to be a part of an array. So you can actually give multiple inputs over here as well. So that is something that you can try it out later on in order to add multiple things. So as you can see, it is adding the complete path of that particular file. Even though it has added a new thing, you have not written any function in order to select that particular file, right? So different files are added, but we don't have access for it. So let's write the function for that. Now this function will have input as item and column. Let's verify whether it's actually a Python file that we are opening. And then we have to read the file content and add it into our Python code editor. Also, we can change the file name label, right? So the label that we had added in a UI file as the same thing what we are opening. Let's try opening multiple files and see whether we are able to switch between them or not. Okay, I see we have an issue. What I have done is I have directly taken that item and I'm considering that to be a string, whereas that particular item is of a different data type and I have to extract text from it, right? Let's try using this. So now I'm actually able to change the different files that are there. Let me try opening multiple files so that we are able to see. Okay, yes, as you can see, it is able to toggle between the two files. So I hope you enjoyed this particular video. I have put in the links for both the repositories. So one repository is actually related to this whole project that I have actually coded. This is part of my YouTube projects that you can check out, and the main repository from which I have taken this out is my PyCon workshop project, in which I have also given tutorials for game development as well. I'll try to make a video on that as well. So make sure you put your thoughts in your comments, like what sort of videos also you want to see into this, or you have any doubts or anything that I can clarify. So make sure you like, subscribe and do comment down below, and thanks for watching.